And thanks for joining us. It's been another day of questioning at the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee probe into an alleged plot to remove the Inspector General of Police, Dr. George Akufo-Dampare. Today, though, that inquest was behind closed doors as the National Security Minister and the IGP, as well as 4 other witnesses, made appearances before the Atachia Committee. First, though, a recap of what transpired yesterday when the Inspector General of Police appeared before this ad hoc committee.
The point I'm trying to make is the fact that we are all human beings. And at times, these things happen. You may have all what it takes to handle the situation. But when you are speaking to a matter and the feeling of how you feel comes on board, it's normal. And the most important thing is that I understand all the issues you are raising. And I'm in sync with it because I'm a true Christian.
Now, do you have a working relationship with Chief Bugre Nabu?
Honorable Chair, I do not have a working relationship with him. Probably my brother wanted to say I'm the best and he missed it. Because the records are there for everybody to see. The beauty of mankind is that everybody has an opinion and he can express it in any form or shape. But that has not changed the facts. And this is the point, Honorable Chair. Since my colleagues and I, and the rest of the commands across the country, had opportunity by the grace of God and with the honor done me by His Excellency the President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, we committed ourselves to transforming the organization to become the best in the country and a reference point for Africa and beyond in a teamwork fashion based on Genesis 1:26. So even granted that I'm the West, then all of us collectively are the West, including probably my brother who was serving in that capacity as member of the team that I lead. So I think it was a slip of tongue on his part. And I would tell you the most important thing is this: election involves so many stakeholders, and each one has its role, and the police also has its role. An election is a simple matter where each stakeholder play its role, and collectively we end up ensuring that it is over, and the people then decide who becomes the leaders. So nobody has some supremacy in terms of when it comes to his or an entity or an institution, when it comes to its role in ensuring that elections are successfully. As far as I'm concerned, all the stakeholders has to play their role, and the point is that because each role is unique, you cannot even compare to see which one is on top and which one is not. So as far as I'm concerned, all the stakeholders have critical roles to play in ensuring that our elections are successful. Honorable Chair, at the time that they were making it, without a shred of evidence, and Honorable Chair, those wide allegations without a shred of evidence has brought a lot of pain to myself, my family across the country, and especially my wife and children. That you are so patriotic because you believe in what you call Pan-Ghanaianism, where you think that because of your multi-ethnic nature, everybody you see, as long as the person is a Ghanaian, is your brother or a sister, mother or father, uncle or auntie. Then the pain also to my command, my leaders, my team, that we work together, that we all know. And the pain to the thousands of police people who are appreciating the strides that we are making in transforming the organization to be the best institution in the country and a reference point for the rest of the world. They came, made all these allegations in order to cover up probably the shame associated with what they got themselves involved in the first place. And I, an innocent person, focusing on my job, working in concert with my team and all commands across the country to keep the country safe and make it to be at peace with itself. I've been asked to come and answer to these allegations.
Excerpts of activities which transpired in the last 24 hours. But now there's an update. Let's cross over now to Parliament House, where, of course, these proceedings are proceeding for today. Interesting way of putting it. But Samuel Mbura, my colleague, is there for us, monitoring all of the developments. Just bring us up to speed with, some of the bits and pieces of what we're hearing as fallouts from today's meeting, knowing that this is happening in camera.
Well, Blessed, so the in-camera hearing has ended for today. The National Security Minister, Albert Kandapa, was the one who appeared before the committee. He came without our notice and left without our notice, but he spent about 1 hour before the committee testifying. The reason he appeared before the committee is the fact that his ministry, according to the committee, had already launched investigations into the leaked tape, and some of the witnesses were already invited for scrutiny. So his presence was to help them unravel some of the truths in the allegations, for them to have a flawless report. So after the engagement with the committee, in which the committee chairman said it has been fruitful, he presented a paper. So the committee was expecting that he would tender that in as evidence, but he said because of national security consequence, he may not be able to tender that in. So they were done with him and he left. So 4 of the witnesses appeared before the committee. We had Superintendent George Asare, we had COP Alex Mensah, we also had Chief Superintendent Eric Emmanuel Jebi, and the chief witness, Daniel Bogrenabu. Unfortunately, they were not scrutinized on their evidence before the committee. We're told that they have agreed that on the 2nd of October, the sitting will resume. So IGP Dr. Akufu Dampare was not able to be part of this particular meeting or this session because we're told he had an equally important National Security Council meeting that he couldn't have abandoned to come for the committee's meeting. So he wasn't here for the hearing, but he was represented by his lawyers that were led by lawyer Kwame Jan. After the engagement with the committee, I spoke to lawyer Kwame Jan. He wouldn't talk to me the details about it. He only told me that no further comments. However, they are ready to come on the 2nd of October for it. Same as the lawyer for Superintendent George Asare, Mr. Alfred Papa Dakwa, that they are satisfied with the processes so far. Fortunately, on my part, I was able to catch up with COP Alex Mensah, the main man at the center of this leaked tape. We know he'll be going for retirement by the close of this week, because we're told around between 16 to 17, he should be going on retirement. So by the close of this week, he should be going on retirement. But he told me that he is not perturbed at all. He has a solid case, and Ghanaians will know the truth on the 2nd of October, or when they start scrutinizing the allegations or the evidence that he's going to put before them. So all parties have spoken to us, but they wouldn't want to go into substantive issues about the allegations and all that. So after this meeting, the chairman of the committee, Samuel Atachie, came to address the media, and then he spoke about the fact that I actually asked that specific question as to where this second tape is coming from. You know, the reason they had to adjourn some of his sitting was the fact that they had a second tape coming in and they had to scrutinize it. So I asked that question to find out the source of the second tape. He confirmed to me that the second tape is coming from Chief Buguri Nabu, the star witness in this case. So this second tape captures the conversation that Chief Buguri Nabu had with the accusers of the IGP at his office in Osu. So they have furnished all the parties involved with the necessary proceedings, the transcriptions of this, and they expect that the next sitting there will not be objections about the tape and all that. So yes, it has now been revealed, contrary to earlier resistance by the committee to tell us the source of the second tape. You know, there is also this video that has, or purportedly has a voice of Buguri Nabu alleging that he has been paid 10,000 Ghana cedis from the office of the IGP, and also some contracts have been awarded to him by the IGP. We know the IGP has denied all these claims flatly, but the committee chairman said if need be, they are going to scrutinize any material that is available or relevant to this leaked tape thing. So it is going to take a wider coverage, and going forward, they're going to have a 5 consecutive times sitting on this case, and all these sittings will be in camera. So at the moment, we've closed proceedings for today, and we are expected to resume monitoring of these proceedings on the 2nd of October 2023. Blessed.
Okay, quite a long break for the committee itself, but someone who are joining us live from Parliament. I want us now to listen to COP Alex Mensah, who's been reacting to some of the concerns and fallouts from today's meeting.
You are done with the scrutiny today?
I'm sorry.
You are done today?
Yeah, we've done.
You are done?
Yes.
The IGP didn't come?
Yes, he did.
The National Security Minister appeared before the committee?
Yes, I've told you that I don't want to speak on it.
Have you presented your evidence?
No.
Why? They didn't give you the opportunity?
Not started yet.
They've not even started?
No.
So who did they deal with?
I've told you I don't want to make any comment.
But you're a strong man. Why wouldn't you want to talk about it? You're a strong man. You're a strong man. We know that you are.
Yes, I will not make.
You are the blunt type. So whatever you see, you say.
That I will not make comment on this issue.
So we will take it that today was the preliminary of the.
I don't know. I don't know. You can get these answers from the Parliamentary Select Committee.
But are you happy? Are you happy with the process so far?
Very, very happy.
You are happy with the process?
Very.
Do you think you have been given a fair hearing on this?
Very, very fair.
So we should be expecting.
Very fair. Very fair.
Very fair. We should be expecting solid evidence from you.
Yes.
Is your evidence ready?
Everything is ready.
Everything is ready, including what? Including what?
I'm not ready to comment on anything. I only tell you everything is ready. And that's it.
I see.
What is that one? The proceedings that
Nothing you see.
What is that one? Makes you feel happy?
No. The process is everything is going on well. Okay. Everything is going on well.
So when are we expecting you?
It's the 2nd of October.
The 2nd of October, you should be coming before the committee.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
What's your message to Ghanaians?
I don't want to speak now.
Ghanaians are willing to hear from you.
The truth will come out.
The truth?
Yes.
From COP Alex Mensah?
Yes.
Okay, the truth, he says, will stand. But how about the lawyers of the IGP who equally appeared before the committee today? We can listen to some of them.
When are you coming again?
We are coming back 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th.
Wow.
And 6th of October.
With this one, IGP himself will be coming?
All the days, 5 days.
Okay.
5 days, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th.
Okay, it's a good time now to bring in Emmanuel Kotin, Executive Director for the Africa Center for Security and Counter-Terrorism. Thank you, sir, for spending some time with us. Fast developing issue, but now it's on ice, isn't it? Knowing that the committee has some break period up until next month, at least, to resume hearings. So within this period, what's your expectation, first of all, from the committee and also from the Inspector General of Police, who's been accused of a number of issues, including the fact that he's not leading the police service in the direction it should be going?
Well, Blessing, thank you for having me, and very good afternoon to your cherished listeners. In fact, I've always maintained that the future is so pregnant and there will be a lot of interesting revelation ahead. And you see the proceedings on ice now, just like you mentioned. I think the committee will go into conclave and redesign the way they approach this delicate issue that have very serious national security implications. I think the committee might also look at other videos that are coming up. And I will urge them to take interest in such videos because the persons identified before the audios or the videos, some of them are before the committee, but others are not. Especially the video that seek to purport the allegation from a voice that Buru Nabo takes 10,000 cedis from the police, and that of the contract. I think we should be interested in that too. I also want to avert the mind of the committee to one other thing. We should be interested in the leak, the source of the leak. And you know, Star FM broke this news. So if you are able to identify that, we can trace the trail, and that will be very significant in terms of evidence before the committee. Don't forget, Dampare is not on trial. I think the Ghana police as an institution is on trial.
Yeah, sorry for cutting through. I'm just asking the question. What will be the relevance anyway? Now the audio is in the public domain. The substance of the matter is to try and verify the audio issues of whether or not these were the exact claims that were made, and to proceed with remedial measures. Why go back, trail, or perhaps track, in your words, the source of this leaked audio? What would be the relevance there?
Because of investigations, you need all this trail to be able to make a very pronounced judgment or recommendation that will be fair to both parties. And you see the videos I'm talking of. That is where Buru Nabo was caught saying that he received 10,000 from the IGP, and the contract issues also emanated from that video. So that should be a source of concern and of interest to the committee, because this video is in the public space and is creating a lot of misinformation. So I think in criminal jurisprudence, or for the fair play of investigation, it's proper that they put all this evidence into perspective in their work. You also made mention about some of the things that the Inspector General of Police have been accused of. You see, the Ghana Police Service is a regimental institution. We must make that very clear. And in regimental institutions, it's not like other public institutions that gives a way for the kind of dissent we are getting with the situation before us now. And we must also get one thing very clear. In human resource management, it cannot be said that when there's change of leadership, it is natural that certain changes will be done to help the head of such an institution to deliver his mandate. But it cannot be said that such changes will provoke the kind of upheavals we have in the Ghana Police Service now. And look, I have spoken to rank and file within the service. The allegations are so damning. And I think that it's only proper that as a country, we take stock and make use of this opportunity that is before us to engineer security reforms. Don't forget, I don't remember the last time we had security sector reforms within our security agencies, not only the police. And you know, our democracy has evolved over a period. And I think that some of the security acts needs a look at so that it can be in tandem with our democracy or our constitution. What are the issues? What are the allegations? You see, yesterday, they asked him about his idea of centralizing information within the service. And he's claimed that it was in line with international best practice. And I strongly disagree with that. And this afternoon, I listened to the midday news where you spoke to a BBC correspondent using Scotland Yard as an example. The journalist should equally have used the Metropolitan Constabulary because they are in charge directly with the internal security of the state equivalent to our police here.
Yeah.
And I have not seen anywhere that we are looking at decentralizing our police service. That was where the concept of community policing came about, that you decentralize information. I come from Sabuba in the northern region. Why should it be the case that an event will happen in Sabuba and the commander in Sabuba cannot speak to the issues? It has to come to Accra. And look at the bureaucratic nature of our system. He rather did the opposite. He rather decentralized intelligence. You understand?
Okay.
And I feel that intelligence is just the matter of collecting information. It's how you manage same. So it is intelligence rather he should have centralized and decentralized the information flow within the service.
Okay, the feeling now is that the committee is probably prolonging, rift and the tension within the service by, further postponing this matter to October 2. The feeling is, why not deal with this expeditiously, have, all the matters resolved in the shortest possible time, knowing that there are implications for national security?
Not at all, Blessing. You see, this is a very delicate issue. And if you look at the issues, I think we need all the time and patience to digest the issues properly, make sure we are fair to all parties within the divide. Don't forget, as part of their terms of reference, they are supposed to make recommendations. And if you look at the heart of the upheavals within the service, there are issues that have to do with their welfare, promotions, and other things. And I think that it's only fair that we give the committee an ample time to do its work properly. But Blessing, let's look at this thing this way. What would the outcome of this committee finding be, really? It can go beyond Parliament. So to me, I think that I agree with my other colleagues who are calling for a national commission of inquiry, probably headed by a High Court judge or an appeals court judge, so that we can diagnose the problems very well. Look at yesterday. We had the IGP crying before the cameras because he felt that he has not been properly treated. But I think that it was very unfortunate for him to cry before the committee, because the committee, for lack of any better expression, had rather provided him a platform to rebut many of these allegations that has been leveled against him. And let us make one thing clear, Blessing. The personality of the IGP is not on trial at all. It is the office of the IGP. And you see yesterday, when he appeared before the committee, as a requirement, all the POMAB members came with him. That is why it is a regimental institution. So for him to have used the presence of the POMAB members as a fiat for his team playing skills, I think it was so disingenuous. It is like the President of the Republic appearing before Parliament on a treasonable investigative kind of thing like we have before us, and the cabinet ministers will not come with him. Having said that, Blessing, you see, why are we investigating this tape? We have to get that right, because there was an allegation that a senior police commissioner is alleging that somebody is an NDC sympathizer, and then when he's allowed to remain in office, it will give the MPP the opportunity to rig the elections.
Okay.
Naming people and tagging people as MPP It's not new within the service. And I can give you two examples. You know this COP Garba. This COP Garba has remained in his rank for over 5 years now. He had a job to do with UN. He was refused release by this current IGP and tagged him as an NDC commissioner who was going to make money and come and lobby for the IGP. So it means that all these things are not new within the system. It is as old as the system itself. And COP members should not be hanged for being bold to come out to speak about it. At least it has afforded us an opportunity to look at reforms within the service.
Okay. We'll see if these reforms will happen. Grateful for spending some time with us, Emmanuel Kotin. Well, it's been a long and difficult 3 years, but today the Ghana Education Service says it has successfully restored the education calendar to pre-COVID times. Well, there's a statement coming through from the Ghana Education Service indicating that schools will resume for new academic year on October 3. So the statement, excerpts of it you have on your screens right now. In fact, that's the entire statement as we speak, pointing to the fact that management of the Ghana Education Service wishes to inform the general public that reopening date for the basic schools, that's KG primary and junior high schools across the country, for first term of 2023-2024 academic year is 3rd of October 2023. This brings back the academic calendar back to pre-COVID-19 period, and we wish to also convey to all teaching and non-teaching staff the sincere appreciation of management for the immense support during our efforts to ensure teaching and learning during the difficult period of our country. By this letter, the Regional Directors of Education requested to communicate the date to all the MMDEs, that's the Municipal Metro District Directors of Education, to inform all heads of basic schools to bring to the attention of parents and guardians and students to take note to prepare accordingly for a smooth and effective academic work. And that's the statement being signed by Dr. Kwabena Bempatando, who's the Director, Deputy Director General for the service. Okay, now let's hear from Kwesi Kwarteng, who's a spokesperson for the Education Ministry, joining us now. It's good that all of this is coming to pre-COVID era, but then the question about forging ahead. What concrete structures are being put in place now by the ministry to sustain the gains that you've been able to make over the years?
All right, thank you very much, and then good afternoon to you and your viewers. I mean, definitely we are aware that pre-COVID we had an academic calendar that was rolled out, and that began from September to July in terms of the starting point of the academic calendar. But of course, due to the disruptions occasioned by the COVID and the fact that we almost spent almost a year in the house, and the fact that we needed to make some adjustments and get the instructional hours, I mean, we are all very much aware that there were some difficulties and kind of some change and some irregular calendar that we were following. But recall also that we made a promise and assured the general public that within a space of 3 years, we're going to work to revert it. And that is why we are here now. Nothing basically is going to change when it comes to the instruction and the instructional hours. It's just that because it's always been 14, 13, 13 or 14, 13, 14. I mean, particularly if you look at within the academic year, we had about 39 weeks that students are supposed to be in school and study. In between these 39 weeks, we have divided it into first term, second term, and third term. And it's important that I add that when it comes to this conversation, we are referring to the basic school, that is from KG up to the JHS level. So we are just by this communique saying and once again assuring parents that we are reverting, or we've been able to revert to the old times where school began largely in September or October. This essentially means that we are going to have our first term and also school reopening in 3rd of October and then they will close somewhere around December. And of course, when you look at the second term to essentially, students are also going to enjoy like 3 months, that is January to March. And then, of course, we begin again in April. And then, of course, from April, which is the third term, where it begins also to somewhere July. And then, so this essentially means that students and teachers are now going to enjoy the long vacations, which was almost 7 to 8 weeks that they used to have previously. So it's just, how do you call it, a revert to the old normal that we used to know. And essentially, it's also an invitation for us to say thank you to our dear cherished teachers and the students who are to improvise and a lot of times have to forfeit most of their, how do you call it, most of their vacations, because a lot of them had shorter vacations. But this time around, because we have been able to revert to the normal or the old normal, we should say that we want to thank them. And from the 3rd of October, we are beginning the 2023-2024 academic year.
How about arrangements for the for those in junior high school, the BECE? Are you doing any changes about that too?
In terms of students, I mean, if you can be specific with the question.
Yeah, in terms of the timeline or the dates, because there was some adjustment to that as well, I believe.
Yes, so as soon as this reverse back to the old normal, essentially we are going to go by that calendar, not the one that we are witnessing now. So essentially, I mean, the times that we used to write BEC, that is where we are going to write. It won't be. So essentially, all what we used to, in terms of the academic calendar, we used to know in the past, where school began in September and then ends in somewhere June, July. That is what we are going to do. I mean, so what it means is that in terms of BEC, of course, I mean, this conversation is also at the basic school level. Everything has reverted to the previous arrangement that we all used to, including even the BEC. Because I mean, there wouldn't be any point that you change the schedule of BEC whilst the academic calendar has reverted to the old normal.
COVID-19 has posed significant challenges. It's also presenting an opportunity to learn. What has the service learned from all of this, and what sort of lessons are you picking from the the pandemic era, just to influence reform going forward?
Yes, obviously. I mean, yes, it has its own pros and cons. I mean, the cons largely had to do with the disruptions that were within the calendar and the fact that we all needed to adapt. But also have some positive outcomes that we've all learned. I mean, today we are having a conversation largely when it comes to e-learning. Today, if you look at, let's say, an agency like SendLoss, it's never been improved and retooled and improved like never before. Now, IT, or how do you call it, digital education is now on the rise. If you look at, for instance, interventions like Gallup, under the Gallup project, for instance, now you have head teachers and headmasters now trained when it comes to the use of the use and adaptation to digital education and digital learning. Today, we are talking about the, how do you call it, the iBox and the offline component, and the fact that students can even learn without, necessarily the assistance of even a teacher, or without a teacher necessarily standing in front of them. So, I mean, these are all lessons that we need to improve on as a people, and then make it, how do you call it, transform our education space in all.
And speaking about the education sector, I'm sure that at the ministerial level as well, there's some policy considerations and much more you're willing to do as you go on this long vacation to provide you the opportunity to reflect and to build on the agenda of the ministry, which is to increase access and improve quality across the country. How are you going about that, and what plans do you have for the future?
Are you asking of reforms at the ministry?
Probably there are some policies in the pipeline aimed at improving quality, I believe.
Of course, I mean, you and I are very much aware that education is largely centered on three key variables: access, quality, and then relevance. The fact that access and quality, when you marry it has to have an impact on our socio-economic transformation. And so clearly, if there is no, how do you call it, quality education, there is no way we are going to have education having an impact on our socio-economic transformation. I mean, it is the more reason why you have always heard the Minister for Education saying that we cannot memorize our way out of poverty, and the kind of education that we know it's not education that solves societal problems, that makes students assertive, that makes students critical thinkers. And so you are very much aware that in terms of even the reform implementation from the basic level, we've revised and reviewed and implemented a new curriculum. Also at the SHS level, I mean, if you look at administration, for instance, largely, I mean, the government had largely promised free SHS. But in addition, you had the Minister for Education also single-handedly spearheading STEM education, which is, I mean, the order of the day, because in the 21st century revolution and the 21st century, at no point can you, how do you call it, train students to solve societal problems if they do not have knowledge in STEM. And so, yes, largely the reforms is centered on realigning and repositioning our educational system to make sure that we meet the 21st century demands.
We wait to see what then happens in the coming year, but of course it's something we're all looking up to. Thank you, Kwesi Kotin, for spending some time with us.
Thank you.
He's the spokesperson for the Ministry of Education. Now to the economy, inflation slumping for the very first time to its lowest point in this year. 40.1% is the figure that we're dealing with, but it appears that food inflation remains on the surge. Why is this happening? Let's listen to the government statistician, Professor Samuel Enim, announcing that earlier today.
Line figure for August 2023 rate of inflation stood at 40.1%, indicating that between August 2022 and August 2023, prices of goods and services generally went up by 40.1% over the one-year period. That is between August 2022 and August 2023, general prices of goods and services went up by 40.1%. While we continue to see higher rate of inflation, this is the first time that we're seeing a slowdown in the rate of increase in our rate of inflation. Last month, July 2023, the rate of inflation stood at 43.1%, and this was on the back of consistent increases in the rate of inflation in the last 5 months, and we're now seeing a slowdown in the rate of increase by 3.0 percentage points, with the rate of inflation slowing down from 43.1% in July 2023 to 40.1% in August 2023. Based on the disaggregations from a food and non-food perspective, we recorded a 21 percentage point difference between food inflation and non-food inflation, with food inflation 51.9% for the month of August 2023 and non-food inflation 30.9%. Respectively, food inflation and non-food inflation have slowed down by 3.1% and 2.9%, given the rates that were recorded for July 2023. Further disaggregating the headline figure of 40.1% for inflation on imported items and inflation on locally produced items. Inflation on locally produced items stood at 42.4% for the month of August 2023, relative to 86.2%. 36.2% for inflation on imported items for the month of August 2023. In the last 12 months, it's the first time we've seen a higher rate of inflation for locally produced items relative to inflation for imported items. From a geographic point of view, we identified the Northeast region recording the highest rate of inflation of 60.1% and the Greater Accra region recording the least rate of inflation of 31.8% for the month of August 2023. Inflation from the perspective of month-on-month inflation, we recorded deflation of 0.2% for the month of August 2023. Disaggregating this from a food and non-food perspective, both food and non-food inflation recorded a deflation of 0.3% and 0.2% for the month of August 2023.
Also, government statistician Professor Samuel Enim announcing that earlier today. What's the implication and why are we seeing a surge when it comes to food inflation? Joining us now is the head of course, data analyst Isaac Ofieje, who's with our research desk, joining us with more on the figures that we're seeing, the lowest ever since we started this year. But for those of us who, of course, go to the markets, there'll still be complaints slightly about because of the pricing.
Absolutely. That's why we have to appreciate this inflation as, an average, and then also testing your basket of goods that you consume as an ordinary or an average Ghanaian. In fact, it is always important to compare this year on year and see the trend as to whether we are going forward or we are actually, going back. In terms of, we had a target of 8.8, I think 8.8 plus or minus 2. We were not able to do that. We've now revised that target to end the year with an inflation rate of a little above 31% for 2023. But if you compare this 40.1 headline inflation to what we had the last time we had such a low inflation rate, or somewhere September 2022.
I see.
So this is a 1 year period, and this is the lowest in 12 months. Significant news, very positive news for the economy. And because it's one of the indicators, some of the things that when you have an IMF program, you should expect to improve is inflation rate. Your currency must be stabilized, and then also you must have an improvement in your import cover, and then also your international reserve. So positive news over there. But it is interesting, when the government statistician was speaking, he said something, I don't know if you really paid attention. He said that Northeast region is the region with the highest inflation currently.
I see.
The headline inflation is 40.1, but in Northeast, inflation is currently around 60.1%. And if you look at Greater Accra, we all know inflation in Greater Accra should, when we are talking about the usual suspect in terms of which region has the highest inflation, which should include Greater Accra. But now it's one of the regions with the least or the lowest inflation in August 2022. So some positive news there. But it will be interesting to know why Northeast region is currently...
Is this indeed? But if you look at the entire picture, and of course you have excerpts of that on your screens right now, an undulating trend of how the figures appear to be behaving. 33.9 as of August 2022. You look at the same period this year, and
you compare, you see it's a little bit... It's high.
Yeah.
That's 40.1. In August last year was around 30.9 or so.
Yeah. So you just look at that constant surge and, deep of the figures. What's really accounting for this? Is there any explanation from the statistical
Well, of course, some of the items with very, heavy weight in terms of inflation continues to be food and non-alcoholic beverage, housing and utilities, and also transport. Maybe we are not seeing the frequent increments in transport fares, but it's one of the items with very high weight on inflation, around 10.2%. But interestingly, Blaise, that when we talk about inflation, it's always good to disaggregate so that the ordinary Ghanaian can resonate with the figures that we are actually speaking about. So headline inflation is 40.1. But if you look at inflation for an item or a food item like dog meat, dog meat inflation is around 97.8%.
Right.
Headline is 40. You have dog meat inflation being around 97.8%. Now, if you look at inflation rate for fish, from the sea, it's around 76.8%. Tomatoes is around 74.8%. Rice, local rice, inflation is around 73.5%. Crab, those of us who love to be I'm an Adventist, so I mean, it's...
You love that a lot?
No, I don't really.
Okay, I get it.
But people love to take crab, they love to have it in their okras.
Yeah, and all of that.
Yeah, inflation is around 73%. Toothpaste, inflation is around 72.7%. Amane or herring is around 71.8%. Baby food, and fathers and mothers, baby food is still very expensive. It's around 71.2%, and palm oil is around 70.2%. And ready-made clothing for boys still remains very high with an inflation rate of 70%. So these are the top 20 items probably that the Ghana Statistical Service policy, wants us to engage properly and then also use for us as a policy engagement tool and all of that. So these 20 items, all recorded inflation rates above the headline figure of 40.1%.
Isaac Kofi bringing us the latest on that. Let's, of course, hear from economist Dr. Patrick Esumi, who's joining us now. Doc, the latest figures that we're seeing now, what will be, the impact on our pockets?
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to viewers. Thanks for having me. So, I think, first of all, we have to understand that the inflation is a backward-looking measure. So it's not something that is coming up. So it's something that we've already experienced, because the 40+% that you see is the rate of change between August this year and August last year. But in terms of what it means for the overall stability of the economy and where we are, well, so the number is a reduction, which generally is, for me, is a little bit of a pleasant surprise. I wasn't expecting that the inflation number will go down at this point. So overall, it doesn't mean that the reduction doesn't mean that prices are falling. Prices are still rising, except that compared to the previous month, prices are not rising as fast. So we shouldn't misconceive that to mean things are getting better.
Rather, what's the reality, sir?
Well, so the simple reality is that the rate at which prices are rising has slowed down a little bit. Things are still getting more expensive, but except that compared to previous month, it is not getting as expensive as it used to be. So we shouldn't think that the reduction means there's more, our purchasing power has increased or anything like that. That's not the case.
And Professor Lord Mensah is also joining the conversation. Prof, the opinion of Dr. Patrick Esumi, the fact that, yes, the figure might look good on paper, except that we need to exercise some caution. What do you also think about the figures?
Yeah, I mean, numerically, it's showing a downwards signal. I mean, inflation, dropping from 43 point something to 40.1. I mean, it shows that general price levels as compared to August 2022 has generally, increased by 41%. And so that's a signal. But then also we may have to look at how this is related to investment. Treasury bill rate as we speak now is around 30 point something percent. And so we still, seeing that negative real value on investment. And as a result of that, we shouldn't, jubilate that much, when it comes to this reduction. Until we see inflation running at par with investment rate, we cannot, keep our hands in the air and be jubilating as if we've achieved something. So what I would say is that numerically, we see reduction, but then its economic impact, we're not going to feel it yet. Prices are still, going up, as Patrick has indicated, and just that the speed at which, it is going up has reduced, but then the worrying aspect of our inflation is the way food inflation keeps on driving, the inflation numbers. You see, for every country to be comfortable, even in our households, if your kids are going to behave very well, you should always have food in the house. If you have food in the house, you're going to have very, kids that will keep to your home because they always get food to eat. What I would advise is that going forward, policies should be geared towards, the staples. Because if you look at the food aggregation, I was looking at the presentation, tubers, cereals, and all those ones that we consume, every now and then are the ones causing, this inflation drive. And so if government should roll out any policy, I would say that, they should target, cereals. If for nothing at all, rice, should be on the market, maize should be on the market, looking at the tubers as well. So from where I sit, yes, numerically, we've seen a reduction, but its economic impact will not be felt. Looking at, the investments returns relative to the inflation recordings that we have.
Okay. and that's why I believe policies such as the Planting for Food and Jobs would have to come in and be strengthened. But Dr. Patrick, assuming beyond, the PFJ2, what other policy measures would you want to see, at least to address that?
So I think if you do the disaggregation by local inflation on local items and inflation on imported items, you see that the inflation on local items is way higher, and also it's been trending up in the last 3 readings or so. You see that each successive month the inflation on imported items is rising. So it gives you a signal that the overall cost of doing business in this country is rising. And I think we need holistic measures to address that. I agree with Lord about having to doing more investment in the food production chain. But we have to understand that it's a whole chain. We can't say we are supplying fertilizers or we are providing inputs, and that will lead to increased production. And we don't do anything about the distributional side. Because if the roads are not good, and we don't have more storage chains, and we don't have faster and better means of distributing the food by way of road and rail network, the cost of food on the farm at the farm gate might be lower, but the cost of food in markets will still be high. And I think it's one of the challenges that we saw in the first phase of the Planting for Food and Jobs, where the former Agri Minister would say, well, food production is increasing, talking from the point of view of the farm gate. But then, if it's so expensive, because fuel is expensive, and it's difficult to get trucks to cut the food from the production side to the market, then food prices may still go up. So I think we need to have a more holistic approach to addressing the inflation. There is, so we know currently under the IMF program, utility prices are also going up. All of those are adding to the cost of production. So we shouldn't really expect that we'll get anywhere near the medium-term target of 6 to 10%. I think food prices are going to remain high. Inflation is going to remain high. And then food inflation is also going to remain high, because the food inflation we see now is a reflection of the conditions at the previous planting season. Now we are harvesting. If you don't harvest enough, it's not something that we can really do anything about. So we really need to do the investment at the planting season to ensure that, the productivity is high. And at the same time, when we are doing that investment, we also think about the entire distribution chain.
And Isaac, there are more figures that we should be paying attention to, especially the Northeast that you're talking about. But beyond that, what's also striking in this report?
Well, of course, Northeast, for instance, these are regions that they have vast lands, and probably some of the other regions have arable lands for planting for food and jobs.
Right.
But I'm also looking at the data as on the planting for food and jobs, for instance. Between 2017 and 2022, when government actually carried the phase 1 of this planting for food and jobs, we've done the analysis and we've seen that government was spending on average somewhere $17 million every year on the planting for food and jobs. Now, before the PFJ started, food inflation in April 2017, before the PFJ started, was around 7.2%. Now, 6 years later, after we've roll out this planting for food and jobs, food inflation has moved from that 7.2% in April 2017 to now 51.9% in August 2022. It means the situation has worsened. Food inflation has now increased by more than 7-fold in this 6-year period that we roll out this planting for food and job program. That's why I agree with Doc that it's a whole chain. Yeah. And so if you're just dealing with, just supplying fertilizers or just dealing with seedlings and not tackling other aspects, you see the figures, pointing out to you that maybe you're not tackling the whole chain. And if you don't do that, there's no way you're going to, have your food inflation coming down.
Professor Lord Mensah, how do we beat this curve down?
Come again, please.
How do we beat the curve down? Right.
Yeah, I mean, clearly it tells you that the planting for food and jobs, policy did not make impact. Because if you have a policy, you expect that the policy would turn around, inflation. If there should be any indicator that would drive our inflation, it shouldn't be food. I mean, looking at the policy that we've rolled out and the quantums of monies that we've pumped in there. I have always been, saying that we had, yes, on paper, planting for food and jobs, all right, but a lot of the monies went into more of capacity building, and it was the hotels who were benefiting from, the monies that were allocated for planting for food and jobs. So from going forward, I will suggest that, yes, we should, I also, I believe in a whole lot of a systemic approach, where, I mean, you may not look at just the agriculture side, but then there are other factors that may also drive, food inflation. So we should look at it holistically and then approach it, as a system, and that should be able to, solve the problem we're facing now.
Mm. And for you, Dr. Patrick Isurin, on the way forward?
Well, I think the way forward is, improve the overall business environment. I think that's crucial. Cost of doing business in the country is going up, and when that happens, it will reflect in prices. At the same time, we can't emphasize this enough. Making sure that there's holistic investment in the whole agri value chain, from the seedling, from the inputs to the production systems, then the storage systems to the distribution. All of those have to happen, but those things don't happen overnight. If you make those investments today, it might take you at least 6 months before you start seeing the benefit. So we have to do more investment, and then think about think more broadly about how things are working in the economy, not just focus on one aspect.
I'm grateful, gentlemen, Dr. Patrick Isurin and also Professor Lord Mensah for joining the conversation. I will stay on the economy because Ghana's housing deficit was expected to hit some 2 million last year, yet Joy News checks from the 2021 population and housing census is revealing close to 1.3 million housing units in Ghana have been left unoccupied within the Greater Accra, Ashanti and Eastern regions alone, holding more than 50% of those vacant houses that we're talking about. Fortunately, Kofi J is still with us for us to just look at the figures. Quite staggering, particularly at the time when there's a surge in demand for housing.
Mm-hmm. Of course. In fact, if you look at our housing deficit, it was projected that it will move from that 1.7 million housing units to close to 2 million in 2022. We've experienced this, but it's also important to note that as we speak, there are currently somewhere around 10 million housing units in Ghana, and about 1.2 million of these housing units or houses are empty or not being occupied by anybody, probably because of the issue of affordability or whatever. But it's also important to note that according to the UN, for instance, if you spend close to more than 30% of your monthly or annual income on housing, then that housing or rent or whatever doesn't become affordable. We've seen governments roll out a lot of these housing policies. We've seen so many of them, and some of them have been left in the bushes and then all of that. But the country we still have this 2 million housing units. Some of them are available, but the issue has always been affordability. For instance, in the Greater Accra region, where people rent more than build, and if you look at, it's still leading in terms of the region with the highest number of empty dwelling units, more than close to somewhere around 300,000 empty houses in the Greater Accra region. It's not as if people don't want to live in those houses, but it's simply because they can't afford it, or they are in areas that,
no, the point is about affordability, whichever way you look at it, because, just imagine, some houses going for rent in foreign currencies in Ghana. That's against the law.
Just rent, not even buying, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. And if you put some sort of strain on affordability, then people will look for alternatives.
Yeah.
So the data, for instance, says that only about 78.7% of the houses in Ghana we have are conventional, which means they are properly, built or something for people to stay in. But there are other people also looking out for alternatives. So people are now living in containers. So we have about 2.8% of our population living in, or our housing structure being kiosks. We have about 0.9% of them being others, and we have about 8% also being metal containers, and about 9.7% of them being wooden structures. So the question has always been, or the problem has always been, affordability. So the estimate is that the housing deficit is around 2 million housing units. And just imagine 2 million housing units, if you decide to subtract 1.2 million houses that are vacant currently, you realize that if you are able to make these houses affordable for people to live in, just by doing that alone can bring down the housing deficit. But as it stands now, people are not able to afford homes. They can't afford rent. They are spending more than 30% of their monthly or annual, income or salary on housing, which makes this, expenditure not sustainable or affordable.
Isaac is just giving you a prelude to why you need to be at this year's EcoBank Joy News Habitat Fair, and of course get your housing problems solved. So make your way to, first of all, Tema this Friday for our next Minute Clinic, which is coming near you. We definitely have a fantastic package coming your way. Thanks for staying with us here on The Pulse. When we get back, lots of stories for you, including the limited registration exercise taking place across the country. It's coming up. On nearly 200 consumer products and food samples in Ghana has revealed very worrying levels of lead contamination to the popular metallic cookware known as disingenuous. The study conducted by the environmental NGO Pure Earth's Blacksmith Initiative actually revealed disturbing levels of lead in very common consumer products. We'll shortly hear from the country director for Pure Earth, who's Esmond Wisdom Kwanzaa. But first, though, here are details of some of the findings out of that research that was conducted, excerpts of which you have on your screens now, pointing to the levels of lead contamination. We start off with 10% of 193 samples which were conducted, actually containing some levels of lead contamination above the thresholds that were being dealt with. And then there's also the issue about the metallic pot leading the other cookwares that you have. So you find the ceramic footwear and toys as well as cosmetics following through in terms of the levels of contamination out of that range of 4 products that you see there. And the metallic pot leading with a staggering 55% in terms of the contamination rate. So what could be done to check this, and what's the way forward as the Pure Earth group is recommending? Joining us now as country director for the group, Esmond Wisdom Kwanzaa, who's joining us now with more. Thank you, sir, for spending some time with us. Now it's 55%. Who knows? Maybe the figures could surge in the coming years. But what recommendation are you making to check that?
Thank you very much for this opportunity to throw more light on the findings of the Pure Earth Rapid Market Screening project. As you have indicated, the study reveals a very worrying trend of lead concentration in some consumable products, especially the locally manufactured that is sent. I think one thing I need to clarify is that we're not putting this study in the public domain to put fear into people. But what we're seeking to do is to collectively find a solution to this canker of lead pollution and lead poisoning, so that together we can address it. And so, as you might be aware, this research was done in 25 countries, and over 5,000 consumer products were sampled. Here in Ghana, 195 consumer products were sampled in 4 regions: the Greater Accra, Eastern Region, Takoradi, the Western region, and the Ashanti region. Our recommendations are simple. I think a lot of work to be done. We're calling on the government and agencies to intensify blood level screening across the country to ascertain the actual levels of lead poisoning in the population. 2, we are asking for intensified home-based source assessment. Now we know, as a result of the study, that some of these metallic cookwares have lead poisoning above lead contamination or concentration above the reference level. We're talking about 55% here. And you know, Bless, one thing I need to state is that our investigators or our scientists went further to conduct a leachate test. Now, the leachate test actually revealed the amount of lead that can actually leach into the food. Now, 52% of the pots tested leached in concentration greater than the reference levels of 10 microgram per deciliter. That's worrying. 52% of the pots tested leached in concentrations greater than the reference levels of 10 microgram per deciliter. Now, that's worrying. Some will ask, what procedure did you use to arrive at this? The procedure was simple. The pots were filled with water containing acetic acid, which is popularly called vinegar, and boiled for 2 hours to simulate cooking. Then the water was analyzed in the laboratory for lead contamination. Now, that was done 6 different times, and then the results were very clear that the lead concentration in this aluminum pot or this metallic cookware does actually leach into the water.
Okay, there's someone.
So that means that
I guess there's someone watching us now saying you're just throwing figures around. I mean, what's the effect on my stomach? Because I eat every day. I of course use the same cooking ware. What's the big deal after all?
Yeah, so the big deal, based on our finding, is that 20% of the pot tested in theory could result in appreciable blood lead level increase in children.
Wow.
We're talking about blood levels as more than 3.5 microgram per deciliter if food is consumed from them on daily basis. But the good news is that we are engaging the regulatory authorities. We met EPA yesterday to discuss the finding. Today we met with Ghana Standard Authority. I think what we need to do is to strengthen regulation. I think they need to be established framework that actually regulate the activities of these metallic cookware manufacturers.
Okay, I tend to see the danger here, but then how about technology and new ways of cooking? I guess that's another remedial point we could be looking at, isn't it?
Exactly. That's the new ways. Now, what I wanted to also put out there is that it's not all metallic cookware that are, let me say, have a lot of lead concentration levels. We're talking about some levels that are quite good. We're talking about the steel cooking pot, for example, are quite good, but they are very expensive. Now, what we've realized in our study is that the most concentrated lead findings are in these cottage manufacturing companies where they just manufacture these cookwares from these aluminum scraps. That is concerning. What we're telling the public is that be careful where you buy your metallic cookware from. I mean, if you buy it from a very cheap area at a very cheaper cost, the risk is that this metallic cookware may have lead concentration that may be inimical to your health and your children's health. So the good thing is that make sure you get a proper metallic cookware, and you are sure that you probably are not at risk of lead leaching into your food.
I guess this is why we need regulation, as you're pointing to, because technical issues here for the average Ghanaian to just see on the streets or off the shelf that this is a highly concentrated cookware for me. The inability of the citizen to check is where we're limited now. So don't you think so?
I perfectly agree. I think Aside this study, we've done another study which also reveals alarming blood lead levels in children under 5 years. And one thing I can assure you, with our engagement with stakeholders, Ghana Health Service, EPA, and today met with Ghana Standard authorities, that they are determined to be able to put in regulations and framework to curb the alarming rate of this lead pollution and poisoning in the country. It's a global issue, and a lot of people don't know much about this. It's just a new phenomenon, and people are very much concerned. How do we do? You know, we have lead in gasoline. It was just phased off in Ghana in 2004. Now, the focus is on some of these metallic footwear that have probably lead in a concentration in them. And I think we are shining light on this so that together we can support the government and the stakeholders to ensure that the proper frameworks and regulations are in place to address this situation once and for all. So it's not fear and panic at all, but it's just awareness creation and also looking for ways and means.
Okay, I get the point. Which cookware do you use, by the way? Just being curious.
That's a big question. I think we all eat and eat from this.
All right then. PS, we're having some challenge with, of course, the country director for Pure Earth, Esmond Wisdom, who was joining us there on Zoom. Quite an interesting finding there in the report. Well, Ghana, we know in recent times, of course, has experienced devastating impacts of floods, especially in major cities of the country. The rainfall distribution in the next 2 weeks, according to the Meteo Agency, may lead to more localized flooding in low-lying areas, while other places will be experiencing rains above the normal. On climate focus, of course, Kofi Donfe is examining if communities and individuals are prepared to develop resilience and also adapt to climate change.
The rains have come down heavy in the past months. In most instances, floods causing havoc. Communities have been inundated, people stranded, properties and lives have been lost. The rains could be worse in the weeks ahead, according to the Ghana Meteorological Agency.
We know that the flood issues that we get here are not just based on the amount of rainfall that comes, but also because of some conditions that are not so much well to cater for the effects or the impacts of the rains that we see in the southern portions of Ghana. Also, for places in the northern portions, we're seeing the Bagre Dam spillage having some effects on them. So Upper East, Northeast are all seeing some flood issues, not because of the amount of rainfall coming into their area, but because Bagre is full and then has been opened, and then the spillage is causing those flood issues. So we should be worried because the issues that we get are not just limited to the amount of rainfall that we get. Whereas it's more like a compound effect. And so it depends on other activities or events as well. So we should be worried and then be cautious as we enter the minor rainfall season, especially for us in southern Ghana.
The extremes of the season, heightened by illegal mining activities, expose communities to health and environmental risks. Agricultural production and livelihoods of farmers are adversely impacted.
The forests help us to access water, but when the forests are destroyed, we get starved of our source of water supply.
Building resilience is still far from reach. The few natural support systems are under attack by the powerful and affluent in society. Churches, fuel stations, industrial and real estate are harming wetlands and water bodies. Urban and peri-urban trees and greens are sacrificed for commercial construction projects. Environmental analyst Eugene Osei-Tutu says this should not continue if Ghana is to adapt efficiently to climate change.
They must ensure that people are not building in waterways, people are not, creating community centers, artificial pitches and all these things that you see in our communities on waterways. You must also do respect the various zonings that are the Ramsey side, the wetlands and all that, which are being developed to all sorts of things. The various district assemblies must ensure that these areas are protected because they serve as a carbon sink of a sort and as well as a reservoir to, absorb excess rain when this time of the season kicks in.
The government's quest to encourage tree planting under the Green Ghana project has been lauded. This, however, will make little impact if the natural environment is attacked with impunity, without recourse to the collective right to consume good air, build resistance to ill health, and develop sustainably as a people.
If we do things right, we'll be able to free our gutters and the runoff will be able to find its own smooth way to move. You cannot stop water from flowing. And so if you stop it from one point, we'll find another way to flow. And that is what causes the flood issues that we see here. So we should do that. Another thing is that we should try and find ways of collecting water, rainwater. Rain harvesting is one way to also stop flood issues that we have here. So as we're going into the minor rainfall season where we'll be getting lots of rainfall, you could be collecting water in your own homes in any way. Some could be just by having some grasses or trees around, which will stop the rainwater for some time and then take time to infiltrate into the ground.
When you look at the historical data from the Ghana Meteorological Agency, the volumes of rain hasn't really changed much, but it's about the human activities, the improper disposal of waste, meaning that the various individuals in the communities must adequately dispose of their waste. There must be bins for them to do that. Also, the district assemblies and the local entities must ensure that these wastes are collected promptly so that people will not be compelled to put these rubbish, in gutters. There must also be proper zoning of lands. You know that when you go to certain communities, how they are building haphazardly. There must be respect of zonal markings, and these can be done by the district assembly, not necessarily the central government.
Indeed, the realities of climate change are dawning, but the systems for adaptation remain elusive. For Joy News, Kofi Edudumfe reporting.
And our Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, has charged churches in the country to make churches a place where people can seek solace in times of hardship. According to him, the core business of the church is to help people who are in need overcome their troubles. He was speaking at the commissioning of an ultra-modern 16-story facility.
The Methodist Church Ghana has commissioned and dedicated the Wesley Tower in Accra. The 16-story facility has 2 basement floors, 14 offices which will house all directorates, 2 church auditoriums, suites, hospital and other essential facilities.
Of God Almighty, we accept the keys to the building. In the name of God the Father, Son and Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen.
The edifice was constructed by the China State Hualong Construction Company Ghana Limited. Speaking at the commissioning, Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia says the Wesley Towers provides a Grade A office block for the Methodist Church and is optimistic that the edifice will serve as a source of hope and transformation for all who enter.
This day is a testament to the unwavering faith, dedication, and commitment of the entire membership of the Methodist Church Ghana. It is a day of reflection, of thanksgiving, and of looking forward to the bright future that awaits us within these walls. This Wesley Towers is not just a physical structure. It is a symbol of our faith, a beacon of hope,
Presiding Bishop of the Methodist Church, the Most Reverend Dr. Paul Kwabena says the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic affected the completion date, but through prayers, dedication, and financial donations from partners, investors, and members of the Methodist Church Ghana, the facility has been completed. Karen Obin's report read to you.
It is with great joy that we gather to invoke God's blessings upon Wesley Towers, a symbol of God's Spirit, a symbol of enduring hope and unwavering faith of the Methodist people. Our smiles will not grow cold today and the days to come as we lift up our eyes to see this facility, as we come to share our work here in this facility, as we stand here to also propagate the gospel of Jesus Christ to the nations. This is what the Lord has done, and we can say indeed it calls for celebration.
In the name of God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, we unveil this flag to commission the Wesley Towers. Amen. Amen.
And of course, we now have to cross you over to the headquarters of the New Patriotic Party, where we understand the party is holding a press briefing right now. We'll bring you pictures live from the NPP headquarters and also listening to the address being made. Well, Avajib, you can hear me. What's the latest and what's happening there?
Okay, blessed. So just a while ago, the chairman for the Presidential Elections Committee, Professor Aaron Michael Kwe, has just announced the balloting result for the 4 aspirants for the flag bearership of the New Patriotic Party. We know that somewhere last week, the committee attempted to do this balloting, but this didn't happen because the committee as well as the members or the aspirants were not able to iron out some differences. Some of the aspirants we heard from that meeting raised some concerns about the way forward. We know that after the Superdelegate Conference, some of them were not pleased with the modalities of the elections, and so they raised those concerns, put some demands on the table. Those were not immediately addressed by the committee, and so that initial attempt last week hasn't yielded any fruitful result. And so today, the committee met again with the aspirant and those who were not present, their representatives, in order to do the balloting. And at the end of the balloting, the MP for Asin Central, Kennedy Ejepon, actually came again at the first position, just as he did leading to the Superdelegate Congress. Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, the Vice President, came second, and then the former Greek Minister, Dr. Akoto Efrie, came third position, and Engineer Adainimo came fourth on that ballot. And so that is the order in which they will be appearing on the ballot paper in the November Delegate Congress. That will be selecting one of them to carry the flag of the NPP going into the 2024 elections. Now, in addition to that, the chairman for the Presidential Elections Committee, Professor Aaron Michael Kwe, also outlined some modalities on which the next elections will be held. For instance, he emphasized that none of the candidates will be allowed to do any form of campaign for any of the delegates. We know that the Electoral College now has been expanded so much to involve all members of the party across the country. And so that was drummed home to all the presidential aspirants. Another modality is that there will not be the allowance for the request of any proxy vote, and so that is another modality that was outlined. And so the candidates who were present, Kennedy Ejapon himself was present, as well as Engineer Adainimu were all present. In my interaction with Kennedy Ejapon, he says that he coming at the first position again signals that he is destined for this. He is destined to carry the flag of the NPP to win the 2024 election as president of Ghana. And so that is the meaning he's been reading into his first position for the second time. Mr. Adainimo thinks that that is not important. Position on the ballot paper is not important. What is needed is how you will be able to sell your message to the delegate as a candidate. That is the most important thing, and that is what he's focusing on. And so that's what they've been saying about that, Blessed. So that's been what's been going on at the party headquarters. In a short while, the party again will be addressing the media on the cocoa price that was announced by the president some few days ago. And so we are looking forward to that as well.
We see about that. Of course, Jane Savaji is still there at the headquarters of the NPP for us. And in a remarkable display of community service and Christ-like compassion in action, the Empowerment Worship Center hosted the annual medical outreach and back-to-school program, Life Check, powered by the Empowerment Care Foundation. The event, which took place on Saturday, the 9th of September 2023, saw a dedication and a dedicated team of healthcare professionals, volunteers, and also members of the Empowerment Worship Center come together to provide vital medical services to the community. Life Check 2023 was a testament to the church's commitment to holistic empowerment. There's more in this report.
We in Empowerment believe that salvation is in threefold. We are saved, we are being saved, we shall be saved. Instant, continuous, and final. And salvation has three dimensions: the spiritual salvation, the soul salvation, and then the body salvation. So you are saved spiritually, and then you are saved so in the realm of the soul, which is your mind, your emotions, and then the body salvation, which is your physical human well-being. So the vision of Life Check has come about from a bigger understanding of the full package of salvation, really impacting people's life, not just spiritually, but also physically, taking care of people, reaching out people, being a blessing to people, people's life changing and transforming to the original place that God intended to be. The Bible says that when Jesus saw the multitude, he was moved with compassion. The Bible says that, and of some, having compassion, making a difference. The Bible says, whosoever has this worldly goods and shatters the bowels of his compassion, where the other love of God in you. So compassion is the feeling of sympathy for people and the move to want to do something about it. So Life Check is about just the compassion for human being and human life and what people really need. At least not only in the physical, not only in the spiritual, but also in the physical, and in transforming their lives.
Okay, we've seen a multitude of people around. Which communities are they coming from?
Well, they have come from everywhere. They have come from Mamobi, they have come from Achimota, some have come from Lima, they have come from all kinds of places. They have walked from far and near because people just want to be helped, and so we reach out and we put it out there, and they have come, and we have been doing it for some years now. So people sort of know, and they know what to receive, what they get from it when they come.
And that's all we have for you in this package of the polls. Log on to myjoyaline.com for more stories. I'm Les Esca. Thanks for your company. We'll see you again. Bye-bye.